After the first Godzilla movie has been released to rave reviews and massive success, an executive producer of Toho, Iwao Mori, decided to immediately plan a sequel to catch on with the hype. But instead of a sequel as wordy as the original to gain on its footsteps, it was a bit more of a unsorted, unraveled mess. And part of it can be blamed on it being rushed to production out of both fear and hype. Why out of fear? And out of hype, because they wanted to catch on the momentum. They wanted to see more of it on the screen. The sequel, Godzilla Again, is actually not that bad, but it's also not too good. Not too good. A bunch of boring acting, not enough monster scenes, and well, pretty much the plot is just almost the same as any typical monster movie. Two monsters fight, one wins and dies. And kind of ironic considering that the first film was him demonstrating how dangerous nuclear testing was. This one, it is just your typical monster mash. I mean, the only thing they reference is that they brought back Yamane for a cameo to explain how they can stop Godzilla, considering that Serizawa died the previous year and burned the oxygen destroyer with him. There's no way. And so they decided to put these monsters to fight to the death. This film marks the start of other monsters appearing in the franchise, the first one being Anguirus, an ankylosaur that is mutated by lava or whatever, and is fighting with Godzilla for some unknown reason. Could be a territory dispute, or he just wants to settle a score or something. It is unknown and unexplained in the movie. All we know is that these two monsters hate each other's guts and they want to kill each other. Now, don't get me wrong, there's actually a pretty good monster fighting in this one. The monster fights, as scarce as they are actually not that bad. I mean, aside from some cheesy moments and stuff, they're actually pretty good. I mean, you can just see two monsters just fighting it out, all fists, an old fist fight. No special abilities, no throwing buildings at each other. Just how clear depiction of how monsters would fight if they were fighting in open land. And to say the least, it almost redeems the film, but not as much. Mainly because the effects are kind of rushed in this one. I mean, it looks like they're fighting in a little playground of cardboard boxes, and they're just tossing each other around, especially noted by the effects at the time. In comparison to the first film, these ones were not as believable. They're all just rushed. I mean, it looked fake, most of all. And Godzilla ends up giving a bloody finish to Anguirus, and surprisingly, I mean, he bites him in the neck. Yup. Though you don't see the wounds as much because of the black and white, it's still pretty gruesome to see. And this also marks the prediction of a pagoda being destroyed. In this case, it was Osaka Castle, because the film takes place in Osaka, specifically in a tuna cannery where the main protagonists work at, which one of them is portrayed by Hiroshi Koizumi, who would then become a major film star in Mothra and reprise his role in Tokyo SOS about 42 years later. Pretty unique piece of trivia. But like I said, Godzilla burns Anguirus to death, which is pretty both cheesy, derpy, and gruesome at the same time. And, well, how did I come to this? Well, for starters, the film opens with these two fighting it out on Iwado Island. And we see them fall into the ocean, only for Godzilla to appear in Osaka Bay. And as a little reminder of the first film, Yamada suggests using flares against them, because for some reason the first Godzilla was kind of enraged when he saw the lights, as a reference to the old Castle Bravo nuclear test. And also, he falls for it and he walks away. However, at the same time as a poorly written script blamed at, a prison truck is full of prisoners does an escape attempt, which only 3 succeed because 3 dies set in a fire, and another 2 were captured by the police. And guess what? The fire attracts Godzilla and goes back to Osaka once again. Soon we see Anguirus join the fray, and the 2 fight it out in Osaka. And while in the meantime, the 3 remaining robbers or bandits or whatever, they try to escape, but they drown in the waters inside the subway tunnel as an act of karma due to Godzilla pushing Anguirus into Osaka Castle and thus flooding the city. And well, as you saw in the clip, he dies a gruesome death. Enough said. However, that is not the end of the film. That was only halfway. The rest is just boring plots about what this and what that. I mean, the cannery they work at is destroyed, but they built a new one off the coast of Hokkaido. And well, about a year passes by, and Godzilla suddenly reappears out of nowhere, swimming about. However, one of the guys tries to distract him to buy the forces some time to kill him, but he ends up getting himself killed. And what was pretty unique is that they do a surprising showdown for the final act. I mean, they face off against Godzilla on an iceberg around the Bering Sea or the Arctic or whatever. It was a pretty interesting fight. I mean, something that would be reused about 49 years later in 2004. And, well, they get the idea to bury Godzilla under ice after the guy who died ends up crashing his plane into the mountains. The mountains created an avalanche burying Godzilla, as you see by that painting there. They decide to shoot missiles at it, so they bury him completely. And they succeed. And he's frozen under ice for 7 long years. And that's the movie. So in all, the movie was pretty bland, except for monster scenes. The special effects, they weren't even trying. I mean, the Godzilla costume in this one, also known as Yakushu Goji, doesn't even look like Godzilla. I mean, as you can tell by the photo, he looks like a derp face when he shoots out his atomic breath. And speaking of, they don't even color the spikes in while he's shooting it. I mean, all they do is just reuse the same old shot of Godzilla with his derp face open and spewing out what's supposed to be water or acid. I mean, that's it. I mean, the ice scene was okay, and monster fight's decent, but cinematography was just horrible. Horrible. And overall, most fans would agree with me, because even though it was one of the most attended, it wasn't one of the most grossing. And because of that, Toho put Godzilla on hiatus for 7 years. Same exact time as he was imprisoned in the ice. Funny fact. And, well, screenplay is really off color. No, none unintended. And they could have done better. I mean, Toho themselves admitted that it was a rushed sequel. They could have taken the time to make it to a really good monster flick, but no. Executive actions lead to terrible mistakes. And yes, this film did get a release in America. However, it was really, really different and maybe worse than what was done in Japan. In America, they did it completely different. They decided to revamp Godzilla's origin and place a new monster in this place called Gigantus. Gigantus the fire monster. It is by far the worst change you can do to Godzilla. Even worse than what they call in the 1998 remake. I mean, at least they don't change it up. They don't change his name in there at least, or his roar, like in this one, because they dubbed his own roar with Anguirus roar, thus confusing many viewers. And also, Godzilla looks nothing like Gigantus seen in a photo. I mean, and the funny part is, it was Warner Brothers that distributed the film. The same Warner Brothers that would team up with Legendary Pictures and Syncope to produce and release the Godzilla reboot 55 years later. I mean, they retconned the events of the first film, replaced Godzilla with this hideous looking abomination. Nice artwork, by the way. And pit him off against Anguirus. And this is hideously undeferred by a hideous script, which had George Takei as one of the main guys. I think it was Kobayashi, or no, I know it wasn't Tsukioka. Must have been Kobayashi, I think. But still, they redubbed it horribly, even worse than King of the Monsters. I mean, they put Godzilla's roars with Anguirus roars, and they replaced most of Masaru Sato's score with typical stock music from American horror movies. And if you guys don't know, Masaru Sato would be, think of like the second in command after Ifukube. Because, well, if Ifukube isn't around, it would usually be him who would compose the music. And he will for the next couple of years up till Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla in 1974. And the funny part is, it would have been better if Toho would have funded this project called The Volcano Monsters, which basically shows two monsters discovered from a volcano from 2 million years ago, rise again and wreak havoc all over the world. And Godzilla would portray a Tyrannosaur, and Anguirus would portray an Ankylosaur. However, the studio that was supposed to fund it went broke, and they shut down, and the suits went missing. And to this day, they still haven't found them. It's probably unlikely to have found them, considering how long those suits last. And yeah, they could have done that instead of this abomination, and it could have been a better film than produced in Japan. Maybe it could have been more believable, or more frightening, or more enjoyable, or something. But alas, it just wasn't meant to be. So therefore, Godzilla gets retired for 7 years, and although he may have not been seen, Toho continued producing their own type of monster movies, some which gave way to some of the most recognizable monsters around the world, such as Rodan or Radon in Japan. Released in 1956, this tells the origin story of Rodan, and how him and a couple of other pteranodons survived to the modern era, as they wake up from their slumber and start terrorizing Japan. It's actually pretty good, come to think of it. And After Rodan came The Mysterians, released in 1957. It's a movie about how a group of aliens invade Earth and use a bunch of mole monsters called Mogiras to try to subjugate humanity. However, they get pushed back by the SDFs and drive them back out to space. I only know this movie because of the Mogiras and how awful they look, but overall it's not that bad. Next up was Varan, which was released in 1958, telling the story about how Varan was awakened by outsiders trespassing in this territory, and as such starts destroying Japan, especially Tokyo. A rampage of total destruction. So basically, think Godzilla, only shorter, and with glidable flight, like the gliding lizards, and boom, you got Varan. And last but not least, Mothra, released in 1961, debuting the Queen of Monsters. So basically, this is really similar to Godzilla, only it has their own twists. Especially about a giant moth blowing up Tokyo in search of her twin fairies because they've been kidnapped. And once she evolves to an adult, she ravages Newkirk City, New York City in the process. She eventually finds them and takes them back with her to Infinite Island to live with them forever. The end. It's actually not that bad a movie. It stars Hiroshi Koizumi from Godzilla Raids Again in this one as a professor called, I think his name was, I know his last name was Chujo, but not Shinichi. Well, something like that on the lines. It's a pretty good film. You guys should watch it. But this, don't watch it unless you're a really hardcore Godzilla fan and want to watch them all. So yeah, it's pretty much okay to skip this one, considering that it's not that good, and it's only good as a time killer. Nothing much. I mean, it's good with the fights, but it's bad with everything else. So yeah, just skip it and only watch it if you're really bored or if you want to see Godzilla and Anguirus fight in the first place. But yeah, by the time all the previous non-Godzilla films I mentioned take place, they decided to bring him back out of retirement and face him off in one of the greatest crossovers that has ever been seen in over 30 years.